The galaxy was vast, filled with countless stars and unnumbered civilizations. Some were powerful, with fleets that could crush entire worlds. Others were small, surviving only through trade and hope. But in this great sea of life, one truth always remained. War could destroy and hunger could kill even faster. The Rhinari Confederation was once proud. Their worlds had been rich with rivers, forests, and fields. Their trade ships had carried goods across star lanes, and their people had walked tall with dignity. But pride could not feed empty stomachs. Years of conflict, poisoned skies, and broken supply lines had left their planets dry and barren. Where once children laughed in the streets, now they cried in silence, too weak to move. Families tore apart not because of enemies, but because of hunger. Mothers gave their last piece of bread to their children and then faded away quietly. Fathers searched ruined fields, finding nothing but dust. The great markets of their capital, once filled with music and voices, now echoed with silence. When the Rhinari leaders looked upon their people, shame filled their hearts. They had fought to protect their borders, but they could not protect their own children from famine. At last, with pride broken and hope dim, they did what they had never imagined. They sent a plea into the stars. Their message was not polished or grand. It was raw, filled with trembling voices. It carried across the galaxy on open frequencies. If any who hear this still know mercy, help us feed our children. Our worlds are starving. Our people are dying. We beg you, do not let us vanish into silence. For many civilizations, the message was nothing more than background noise. Great empires turned away. To them, hunger on a distant world was not their concern. Some said, let them fall. They are weak. Others whispered, if we give them food, they will only depend on us. And so, they ignored the cries. But far away, on a small blue planet circling an ordinary star, people listened. On Earth, the message did not fall on deaf ears. It struck deep into human hearts. Humanity remembered hunger. They remembered the pages of history written in blood and famine. They remembered the long winters where villages starved, the black years when millions had died for lack of bread. Hunger was not an alien pain. It was their own old wound. And so, when the Council of Earth's nations gathered, the choice was clear. It was not made with hesitation. It was not debated for years. It was decided with one voice. One leader spoke firmly, we will not send weapons. Another added, we will not send armies. And then a third rose, her voice steady, her eyes bright with conviction. We will send what they truly need. We will send food. We will answer with harvest, not war. Factories across Earth shifted their work. Great shipyards, once meant for fleets of defense, began building giants of mercy. Farmers sowed more fields not for themselves, but for strangers among the stars. Children wrote letters and painted pictures to be sent with the shipments, little symbols of hope. From the shipyards rose massive vessels, unlike any warship. They were not bristling with guns. Instead, they carried orchards, rivers of grain, and vaults of preserved meals. They were living arcs of food and life, designed not to conquer but to feed, and so, the harvest fleet was born. In the cold silence of space, these ships shone with a different kind of power. Not the threat of destruction, but the promise of survival. They carried not fire, but bread. Not soldiers, but farmers. Not fear, but compassion. The Rhinari had begged for aid, and humanity answered. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy would see a fleet not of war, but of mercy. And behind every crate of food, every seed, every loaf of bread was the same simple message carried across the stars. You will not starve. Not while Earth still breathes. On Earth, the plea of the Rhinari did not fade into silence. It stayed on every screen, played on every broadcast. The image of starving children with hollow eyes and frail hands reached into the hearts of ordinary people. It was no longer just the cry of strangers. It was the echo of humanity's own past. Farmers in wide fields remembered the days their ancestors had faced famine. Elderly men and women whispered of wars where bread was worth more than gold. Even children, too young to understand history, felt the sadness in the voices that begged across the stars. Humanity could not turn away. In the grand halls of Earth's council, leaders from every nation gathered. The chamber was filled with heavy silence. They all knew the choice before them. They could ignore the call as others had done and let the Rhinari fade into dust. Or they could act. One leader broke the silence. His voice was deep and steady. We will not send weapons. They asked for food, not war. Another leaned forward, her eyes burning with resolve. We will not send armies. They do not need soldiers. They need life. And then the final words came, spoken by a woman whose family had once survived famine on Earth itself. We will send what they truly need. We will send food. We will send life. We will answer not with destruction but with harvest. The chamber filled with nods, murmurs of agreement, and at last with united applause. For once, all of Earth spoke with one voice. From that day, Earth moved with purpose. Factories that once built machines of defense now forged containers for grain and seeds. Shipyards that once shaped warships now crafted vessels of mercy. Farmers across continents sowed extra fields. The harvest that year was not only for Earth, it was for the stars. In every village, town, and city, people joined hands in the effort. Children packed boxes of dried fruits and painted small notes of kindness to tuck inside. Bakers worked through the night, filling storage with bread. Engineers designed systems to carry rivers of clean water aboard the ships. And slowly, rising from Earth's shipyards, came the giants. They were not ships of war. They had no rows of cannons, no missiles locked in place. Instead, they were filled with orchards, gardens, and massive vaults of preserved meals. They were flying worlds of plenty, ships that carried the heartbeat of Earth itself. The people named them harvest ships. Each one carried enough food to feed millions. Each one held seeds, soil, and knowledge. They were not meant to fight, but to rebuild. They were humanity's answer to a galaxy that had forgotten mercy. When the first of these vessels rolled out of the docks, millions gathered to watch. Families stood in fields and rooftops, waving as the ships lifted into the sky. The sound of engines was not like the roar of war. It was a song of hope. All across Earth, people wept with pride. They were not sending armies to conquer. They were sending farmers, teachers, and healers to save lives. In space, the harvest fleet gathered. Dozens of massive vessels formed a shining line, their hulls painted with symbols of wheat, rice, corn, and fruit. They looked less like war machines and more like floating gardens. Yet to the starving, they were more powerful than any dreadnought. Humanity had made its decision. When the fleet's engines burned and the ships leapt into the dark, the people of Earth stood together and whispered the same words. Go, and let no one hunger again. For the first time, the galaxy would see not a fleet of conquest, but a fleet of compassion, and behind them was the strength of an entire world, a world that had once known hunger but had sworn never to let others face it alone. The journey had begun. The Rhinari had begged for aid, and Earth had answered with the greatest gift of all, life itself. The Rhinari homeworld was silent when the strange fleet first appeared in their skies. The people looked upward with fear. For years, ships that entered their orbit brought only sorrow, raiders stealing what little they had or rival powers demanding tribute. Now, as massive human vessels descended, the starving citizens whispered in dread. They are conquerors, some muttered. They have come to take what little remains. Others said nothing. They had no strength left for hope. Their eyes, sunken and hollow, watched as the sky filled with fire from the engines of ships larger than mountains. But then, something unexpected happened. The first harvest ship opened its colossal doors, not to release soldiers or weapons, but to send down containers, vast pallets descending gently to the starving city below. When the first crate opened, the Rhinari gasped. Inside were bright red apples, golden bread, rice sealed in shining packages, and bottles of clean, fresh water. The air filled with a smell many had not known for years, the warm scent of food. At first, the people stood frozen, staring in disbelief. They could not trust their own eyes. Then a small child stepped forward. His thin hands trembled as he picked up a fruit, an apple. Slowly he bit into it. Sweet juice ran down his chin, and for the first time in many years he smiled. That single smile broke the silence. Mothers fell to their knees, weeping as they held food to their children's lips. Fathers shouted thanks, their voices hoarse with relief. Families gathered together, sharing bread with trembling hands. The sound of chewing and crying mixed together, filling the air with something greater than words. Life returning. The humans did not just deliver food and leave. They stepped out of their ships and joined the Rhinari in the streets. Still, the stories spread, and soon delegations from nearby systems came to see with their own eyes. The first to arrive were the Talari, A thin and weary people whose moons had suffered drought for generations. They landed cautiously, unsure of what to expect. But when they walked into a Rhinari city, they found humans and Rhinari eating together at long wooden tables, music echoing in the night air. The smell of roasted grains and sweet fruits filled their senses. The Talari hesitated until a Rhinari child ran forward with bread in her small hands and offered it to them. Her smile was innocent, pure. Slowly, the Talari accepted, and when they tasted the food, tears filled their eyes. Soon after, others came. The Varric, who had lost entire harvest to disease. The Shinari, whose frozen world gave little food. Even wandering refugees with no world at all arrived, drawn by the stories of endless feasts. Each came with caution, but each left with hope. The Rhinari, once beggars, now became hosts. They welcomed their neighbors, saying proudly, "Sit, eat, and see what the humans have given us." Their tables stretched across entire plazas, filled with food from both earth and Rhinari soil. Music grew louder. Fires burned brighter. The harvest fleet opened its doors to all who came. Seeds were given freely. Knowledge was shared without cost. And when alien farmers returned to their own worlds, they carried not just grain but wisdom. The wisdom to heal their own lands. One night, a feast greater than any before was held. Humans, Rhinari, Talari, Varric, and Shinari all sat together. Different languages filled the air, but laughter needed no translation. They broke bread side by side, drinking, singing, and dancing until the night sky itself seemed alive. A Rhinari elder stood raising a cup high. His voice rang across the tables. "Once we begged the galaxy and none answered. But Earth did. Humanity did. They did not bring us chains. They brought us life. And now we share it with all who hunger. Let no one in these stars be alone again." The crowd roared with cheers. Some cried openly. Even the humans, usually quiet and humble, felt their hearts swell with pride. From that night, the feast became more than survival. They became a symbol. They were proof that kindness could bind worlds together stronger than fear or power ever could. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy did not tell stories of famine, but of plenty. Children of different species played together in the streets, their laughter carrying higher than any hymn. The harvest fleet had not conquered a single world, and yet through food, music, and mercy, they had built something greater than empires. They had built unity. Years passed, and the story of the harvest fleet became legend. The humans had come when hope was gone. When voices cried into the dark and no one answered, they came not with guns, not with demands, but with food. And because of that, the galaxy itself began to change. World after world turned green again. Crops grew where famine had once reigned. Families who had starved now sang songs at tables heavy with meals. Generations who had known only fear now dreamed of tomorrow. The name of Earth spread through the stars, not as conquerors, not as traitors, but as givers of life. The Rhinari never forgot. Statues were built in their cities, not of warriors, but of farmers. Bronze figures of human men and women holding baskets of grain stood in plazas where once there had been silence. At the base of one statue, children carved the words, "They fed us when the stars turned away." But the Rhinari were not alone. The Talari planted vast orchards, each tree dedicated to the friends from Earth. The Shinari, on their frozen world, built great halls of ice where food was shared freely, and on the walls they carved human words, "No one eats alone." Even the wandering Varric, with no true home, carried portable tables across the stars, always leaving a seat empty for the humans who had saved them. The harvest fleet itself never stopped. It grew larger, with new ships built not for war but for cultivation. Massive gardens stretched across their hulls, glowing like stars in the night. From planet to planet they traveled, sowing seeds, teaching, feasting. Humanity had created not just a fleet but a tradition, a promise that no world should ever face hunger alone again. Yet the humans themselves remained humble. When asked why they had done this, their answer was always the same: because once on Earth we too were hungry, and someone shared their food with us. We only passed the gift forward. This simple truth spread faster than any empire's decree. The galaxy learned something greater than power. They learned empathy. They learned that kindness could shape the stars. One day, many years later, a council of many races gathered on a neutral world. They came not to divide territory or to fight, but to honor the ones who had united them. At the center of the great hall stood a long table. Upon it were not weapons or scrolls of law, but food, grains, fruits, breads, and dishes from every race. A Rhinari elder stood first. Without earth we would not stand here today. We would be dust. But they gave us life. Let this feast remind us always. A Tolari farmer spoke next. The humans taught us the seed does not belong to one but to all. They taught us to plant not for ourselves but for our children's children. Then at last a human representative rose. His voice was calm but filled with warmth. We did not save you. We only shared what was already enough for all. The true saviors are the hands that plant, the families that cook, the neighbors that share. That is the strength of every world. Silence filled the hall, and then slowly the entire assembly stood. They did not clap, they did not shout. Instead, they bowed their heads in respect for a people who had given everything without asking anything in return. From that day, the galaxy remembered the humans not as warriors but as harvesters of hope. And so, when future generations looked up at the stars, they did not dream of conquest. They dreamed of ships filled with food, of feasts under alien skies, of laughter shared across languages. They dreamed of Earth, for humanity had proven a truth stronger than any empire. The greatest power in the galaxy is not fear, but the gift of breaking bread together, and that gift would never be forgotten. They set long tables under the open sky, covered them with food, and invited everyone to sit. Fires were lit, meals were cooked, and the first true feast began. The Rhinari had forgotten what it felt like to eat until full. That night they remembered. Children laughed as they tasted sweet fruits and honeyed bread. Old men who had prepared themselves for death smiled with tears as they drank clean water. The city, once silent like a grave, now rang with laughter and song. But even as the feast spread, some could not trust it. In the shadows, whispers grew. This is a trick, they said. No one gives so much and asks for nothing. They must want our loyalty, our obedience, our future. Yet the food was real, the warmth was real, and the humans asked for nothing. One Rhinari elder approached a human officer, her voice sharp with suspicion. Tell me, she demanded, what price will you ask for all of this? What chains will you bind us with after we accept your gifts? The human looked at her, tired but gentle, and answered, Our price is this. Let your children grow strong. Let them live to see tomorrow. That is all. The elder studied his face, searching for deceit. But all she saw was honesty, the kind of honesty born from those who had once starved themselves. And slowly, doubt began to fade. More ships descended in the following days. Each one opened with rivers of food, seeds for planting, tools for farming, and even teachers to show how to use them. The Rhinari, still weak, were guided gently back to strength. What had begun as fear became wonder. What had begun as suspicion became gratitude. The Rhinari people, once too weak to raise their heads, now lifted them with pride and hope. They would not vanish into silence, not now, not ever, because humanity had come, not with armies, not with fire, but with harvests and endless feasts beneath the stars. The Rhinari cities, once silent and empty, now glowed with life again. Markets reopened, children played in the streets, and the smell of food carried through the air. Yet even as hope returned, not everyone trusted the humans. In the council halls of the Confederation, leaders whispered in private chambers. They watched the harvest ships with suspicious eyes. To them, nothing in the galaxy was ever free. One counselor, her voice sharp with doubt, said, No empire gives without taking. Humanity must want something, perhaps our loyalty, perhaps our worlds, perhaps our future. Another agreed, his wings trembling with unease. We are weak. This is the perfect time to bind us with hidden chains. They feed our people now, but tomorrow they may demand control. Fear spread like fire. Some citizens hoarded food, convinced it would soon vanish. Others refused to plant the seeds, fearing they were poisoned or that they carried traps. Centuries of betrayal by other species had taught the Rhinari to doubt kindness. Finally, a group of officials demanded answers. They met the human commander in a great stone hall, the banners of their starving world still hanging in tatters. The eldest of the council spoke with cold suspicion. Tell us your price. What will you demand in return for saving us? Will we become your servants? Will we be forced to fight your wars? Speak truth, human. The commander, a tall woman with lines of age upon her face, stood in silence for a long moment. She looked at them not as rulers but as parents desperate for their children. Then she answered in a voice steady and calm. Our price is this, that your children never know the hunger your eyes have seen, that they live, that they grow strong, that they laugh again. That is all we ask. Her words filled the chamber, but many still doubted. One counselor scoffed. No one gives so much and asks so little. You must hide your true desire. The human only shook her head. You are free to believe what you wish. But we came not with chains, only with bread. We came because we remember what it means to starve. And we swore never again, never for us, never for others. The council fell silent. Outside the halls, the truth was spreading in the streets. Families who once fought over crumbs now ate together at great feasts set by human hands. Children once too weak to walk now played with human children, laughing under banners of both worlds. Farmers once hopeless now bent over their fields again, learning how to heal the soil with human guidance. The people saw not conquerors but friends, and yet, in the shadows, fear still whispered. A few leaders plotted secretly, warning that humanity's kindness was the first step to control. They warned that feasts could be more dangerous than fleets. But for the ordinary Rhinari, those who had felt hunger in their bones, the truth was simpler. They knew what it meant to starve, and now they knew what it meant to be fed. One mother, watching her child fall asleep with a full belly, said softly to her neighbor, "If this is a chain, then it is made of kindness, and I will wear it gladly." Her words spread quietly, carried from home to home. Suspicion still lived in the council halls, but among the people, trust had begun to grow, for in every loaf of bread, in every seed, in every smile of the humans who worked beside them, the Rhinari saw something the galaxy had long forgotten: mercy without demand. And though doubt still lingered, the first roots of trust had been planted. The harvest fleet did not vanish after giving food. The humans stayed. Their ships floated above Rhinari skies like gentle guardians, their lights shining through the night. But it was not only food they carried, it was knowledge. The humans walked into the ruined fields where once crops had died and soil had turned to dust. They knelt down, touched the broken ground with bare hands, and showed the Rhinari how to bring life back. At first, the Rhinari farmers watched with suspicion. They had tilled this land for generations, yet here were strangers bending their knees in alien soil, showing them how to heal it. But slowly, suspicion gave way to curiosity. The humans taught how to make the earth fertile again, how to turn ash into rich soil, how to channel water through carved trenches, how to use seeds that could survive harsh winds and poisoned skies. They showed how to build shelters for young plants, how to save part of every harvest for the next. The Rhinari listened, learned, and tried. For the first time in many years, green sprouts broke through the ground. When the first stalks of grain rose, the farmers cried. They had thought their land cursed, but now they saw it reborn, and the humans did not stop there. They taught recipes and cooking, turning unfamiliar foods into meals the Rhinari could love. They showed how to preserve fruits, how to make flour from grain, how to keep food safe for long winters. Every lesson was a gift. Every moment another seed of trust planted deep in the hearts of the people. At night, the feasts continued. The humans and Rhinari sat together at long tables under the stars. There was music, human strings and Rhinari drums joining into one rhythm. There was laughter, different tongues but the same joy. The smell of stews, bread, and roasted fruits filled the air, a perfume of life and hope. A little Rhinari girl once tugged at the sleeve of a human farmer. She looked up with wide eyes and asked, "Why did you come? Why give so much?" The farmer smiled gently. His hands were calloused from years of work in Earth's fields. He knelt so his eyes met hers. Because once long ago our own children starved. Once no one came for us. We swore that if we ever had the power we would never let others suffer as we did. The girl did not fully understand, but she hugged him tightly. To her, the answer was enough. The Rhinari began to see the truth, not in speeches, but in actions. The humans ate the same food they gave, drank the same water, worked the same soil. They were not lords, not rulers, not conquerors. They were companions. The whispers of fear in the council halls did not vanish, but outside among the people, trust grew stronger each day. Neighbors who had once fought over scraps now shared recipes. Children who once wasted away now played games in fields of green. One evening, as the humans and Rhinari shared a great meal, an elder stood and raised his voice. Once we thought humanity would enslave us with kindness, but tonight I see they have freed us with it instead. Our chains were not from them, they were from hunger, and humanity broke them. Cheers rose across the tables. Music played louder, and for the first time in many years, the feast was not only about survival, it was about celebration. The seeds planted were not only those of wheat and rice. They were seeds of hope, of friendship, of a bond that could not be broken by fear. And though the Rhinari had once begged in shame, now they stood tall with gratitude. Their bellies were full, their fields alive, and in their hearts grew something greater than harvest. They had found trust. Months passed, and the Rhinari homeworld changed. Where once there had been dust, now green fields stretched across valleys. Rivers once poisoned, now carried clean water again. Families who had lived on crumbs now gathered around full tables. Laughter returned to streets that had once been silent. The harvest fleet still circled in the skies, but no longer as saviors alone. They had become partners. Humanity had given food, but also the power to grow it again. The Rhinari were no longer dying. They were living. It was then that word began to spread. Merchants and travelers carried stories to other worlds. They spoke of humans who had come with ships full of food, who asked for no gold, no land, no tribute. They told of feasts in the streets, of children laughing again, of barren soil turned fertile. At first, other races did not believe. The galaxy was too used to betrayal. Empires took, they never gave. Fleets destroyed, they never healed. Could there really be a people who gave freely,